Today we're going back to the past and then back to the future as we take a look at the AMX electric bike by Analog Motion. Welcome back to another episode of STU'S Reviews. In September 2019, I took a look at the very first bike by Analog Motion, the AM1. And it was a fantastic electric bike, and I absolutely loved it. And some of you may have been around that long to even remember that. And if not, I'll leave a link in the description below. You can go and check out that review after this episode. But ultimately, I thought it was a fantastic electric bike, and I was really excited to see the future of Analog Motion. Well, I'm back now with another review of the AMX, but instead of progressing, they've sort of regressed, like by 120 years. This is the AMX Classic. It's an echo of heritage reminiscent of the early 1900s. It wouldn't look out of place if you saw it trundling across the screen in a World War I era movie, perhaps painting that idyllic picture of old British countryside, picnics, scones and a nice cold glass of Pimm's. But don't let its looks fool you, because this thing is armed to the teeth with the tech of the future. The motor provides power assist up to approximately 20 mph to a reported total range of 27 miles, with 5 varying levels of power assist for the single-speed carbon belt drive. The frame is stunningly smooth welded and made from an aircraft-grade aluminium weighing just 15.9 kilograms. There's tons of subtle design details here that makes this thing pop, such as the AM logo on the inside of the forks and integrated front and rear lights. This colour is deep blue, but it also comes in a more traditional stealth black, but I must say the blue is beautiful. This is a great looking bike, but before we take it for a ride, let's do a deep dive into its design. Although this design is 120 years old, I don't think using old is the correct terminology here, because this design really is, as the name suggests, a timeless classic, except with a ton of modern twists. Let's face it though, you know that I'm going to love the design already because it's old and it's British, exactly what my studio is set up to be like. So this kind of styling is right up my street. But despite the classic styling, they've actually updated some of the awesome features of the AM1, but they've also updated some of the flaws that I thought the AM1 had as well. Firstly, the deep rims on the AM1 I thought were a little bit unstable in windy weather, and being an island nation, a significant portion of us live on the coast where the wind is always howling. So if you are taking lovely promenade strolls on your electric bike, you don't want instability with the wind taking your wheels away. Well, with the AMX, they've decided to change this and go for a slightly shallower rim, which is, to me, a much better design, and riding it, I can tell you now, it isn't affected anywhere near as much by the wind, so a massive star for the upgrade there. The tyres as well, I think, are slightly wider than it was on the AM1, which offers a more comfortable and stable ride too. But also, the size of the frame is slightly bigger on the AMX. The maximum size that you could get in the AM1 was 55 centimetres, and I criticise this because I'm a giant at 6'8", so it did come off as a tad too small for me. But with this being a 60 centimetre frame at the highest, that means that it will fit people of a taller height. So that, to me, is a fantastic change and definitely much more suited to fit a wider variety of people. Do you know what? It's fantastic to see a company like Analog Motion listening to its users, listening to reviewers, listening to what they want, and then implementing those changes in future iterations. It's super reassuring. Now, other than the positive changes they've made from the AM1, I think there's a couple of design things that I need to mention as well outside of the changes. And let's start with the seat. Now, this is designed with kind of movement, and it's almost a race-style seat, which is pretty firm. Now, that's not always a bad thing because it does allow for better movement when you're actually cycling, but I've been a sloth for the past 9 months of lockdowns and COVID-19, and I've hardly left the house. Now that means that my bottom was not used to cycling at all, and I found that the seat was quite punishing on my bottom for the entirety of the review. Still hurts now. But For those used to cycling and used to that kind of seat, then you're going to be absolutely fine. But for those who want a slightly more comfortable option, then perhaps that seat isn't right for you. Now, there is another model of the AMX, which is the AMX Step. This does have a slightly comfier seat and also has suspension built into that seat as well. Now, I haven't tried this. I can't tell you how much difference that will be and how much difference that will make on the overall comfort, but it may help those with sore bottoms certainly be a bit more comfortable in the ride. Now, there's one other thing actually here as well. The seats on the AMX Step are brown, and I think that brown goes really, really well with the deep blue colour of the AMX, whereas on the AMX Classic it's black. And that looks okay, but I think I would have preferred brown across the entire range. I think that brown and blue go really, really well. Interestingly, I've been told that during the prototype stage as well, they tried to get this deep blue just right, but it kept on coming back from the spray painters as a sort of Cadbury's purple, and it took them a long time to get this perfect shade of deep blue. And I must say, when I opened the box, the first thing I thought was, my God, that is a really nice colour. And it wasn't just me that thought that as well. Sam, who you know comes and helps me out and film occasionally, when he saw it, he said, my God, that blue is really nice. So it isn't just me, that blue is fantastic, and they've done a really good job at choosing that colour. The display they're using is slightly different from the AM1 as well. It's a bit sleeker, it's a bit nicer, and overall it's a nice improvement. There is only one slight criticism with it, and the fact that it's quite hard to see which gearing you've selected in the options for the assist. Is it on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? It's kind of hard to see because it's quite small, especially if you're riding into a headwind and your eyes are just streaming. It's quite difficult to see, so maybe in the future I'd like that display a tiny little bit bigger. I don't know. But overall, actually, it's a really nice improvement over the design. It looks sleek and it seems sleeker too. Another thing that's different is that this doesn't have a throttle. Now, I can understand why it doesn't have a throttle, because it needs to be compliant with local laws. And in the UK, you can't ride a powered motored vehicle on the road without insurance and being taxed, and there's all sorts of weird, horrible, stupid laws dating back to the 1800s that stop us from using motor-powered vehicles such as electric bikes and electric scooters. A lot of that is changing at the moment, and there are some grey areas starting to appear. But at the moment, generally speaking, you shouldn't be riding things like electric bikes that have just a power motor. It has to be electric assist. Now, they sell it without that, obviously to stay compliant. You can buy the throttle on the website separately and install that yourself, because they have left the cable in the whole rigging for you to install later on, which is a nice touch. And it does mean that if you did want the option of adding a throttle, it's there for you. But obviously, make sure you're sticking to your local laws. But on the subject of cables, there are a lot of cables coming out the front of this bike. Like a Medusa's hair amount of cables coming from the front. You've got 2 on each brake, so that's 4 cables. You've got 1 coming from the controller. You've got 1 going to a throttle, which obviously isn't there. It's kind of blank and just sort of hanging there. And you've also got 1 going to a light on the front as well. That's millions of cables on the front of the bike. With that being said, they have done a very good job of managing those cables and running them through the sort of natural course that maybe the brakes would normally take. So that is forgiven a little bit. The thing you need to remember, though, is that this is not unique to Analog Motion. Most electric bikes have this kind of mass and reams of cables coming out the front just to power things like the motor, the brakes, the lights, the control unit, everything that you need in an electric bike. But I would just love to see Analog Motion tackle this in some kind of futuristic and techie way. I'm sure you can, because the design of stuff is fantastic, so I'm watching out for something in future from you. But like I said, I can completely understand exactly why it is how it is. Now, there's only one other thing that I would like from the AMX, and that is a basket. To me, it would make the old 1900s design pretty complete if it had an optional basket like the AM1 had. I guess the reason being is if you wanted to cycle down to your local baker's to buy a baguette, you're going to end up having to shove it down your top, which is going to result in you evidently losing your lunch. I mean, a basket isn't 100% necessary for everybody, but it's just something that I really liked about the AM1, the ability to customize it and add a basket if you wanted to, and that's not something at the moment that's available on the Analog Motion website. But overall, I think they've done a fantastic job on the design. I think it looks beautiful, it's classic, it's timeless. But although it looks like it should be from a movie set in 1918, I think this device is more like a device from Back to the Future. Now about the ride quality, I can tell you straight away that the AMX is an absolute pleasure to ride. The classic styling all adds up to a more relaxed feeling ride than the AM1 and feels perfect for trundling along through the countryside or the city or wherever really. It feels like a pretty universal bike, and although you won't see it doing downhill races anytime soon, the wider tyres make it capable of tackling a variety of surfaces. But if trundling along the country isn't your thing, turn up the assist to 5 because the motor is just insane. Analog Motion quote that it's 50% more powerful than the AM1, and my god, what a difference this makes. The AM1 felt like it was assisting you. Well, this thing feels like it's actually cycling for you. On the highest assist setting, the AMX takes a couple of pushes to get going, and then you can feel the motor kick in like a horse with a distinct speed boost and power. You can feel the bike taking off, and in no time you're nearing the top speed of the AMX, which is quoted at just under 20 mph assisted. The extra power definitely helps on hills too, and I can cycle up pretty steep inclines on the highest level of assist without breaking so much as a single drop of sweat. Although the AMX is quite clearly capable of getting you to top speed through assisted pedalling, I found that because it's a singular fixed gear, any faster than riding 18 mph makes my legs move uncomfortably too fast, and I'm concerned if I continued it faster than 18 mph, my legs would end up tangled like a bowl of spaghetti. The brakes are sufficient, but I would love to see some more stopping power in the future. With the significant increase in power, it makes it all too easy to hit that top speed. And at 20 mph, a quick stop would be benefited with the use of hydraulic brakes. But this would require a lot more setup and know-how, so I appreciate that this will be difficult to implement their home assembly, which I'll go into very shortly. Interestingly, this is the first bike that I've ever ridden that uses belt drive rather than a traditional chain, and an obvious departure from the classic styling. I had to Google the benefits, but it does have quite a few, such as lasting longer than traditional chains, and it won't rust if it gets wet, and also it's really silent, like absolutely silent. It also has the added benefit here of saving a little bit of weight, as chains tend to weigh a surprising amount, and it all adds up. Now with the trimmings and me riding this at 16 stone, I found the battery life comes just shy of what Analog Motion quote. Bear in mind that there's so many factors to how well your battery will perform, such as wind resistance, gradient of terrain, ambient temperature, rider size and rider's weight. In optimum conditions, it's supposed to be able to achieve a 27-mile assisted pedal range on one charge, but I found that with my size and weight, alongside the fact that I live in an area with more hills than people, I can squeeze about 20 miles from the battery, which is still ample for most journeys, and like the AM1, it uses Analog Motion's removable battery design, so you can take multiple batteries or take it into houses and workplaces to charge when you aren't riding without having to take the whole bike in, and it is literally the size of a small water bottle. Now, being heavier and taller than most riders, the increase in frame size is very welcome, although for a better fit of people my height, I would strongly recommend the handlebar riser that Analog Motion sell in their store, which is only 20 quid. The AMX rides just like you expect a bike of this classic design to feel. Simple, straightforward, rugged, adaptable, and quite simply, a good bit of fun. An absolute refinement on Analog Motion's previous models and a futuristic update to a timeless classic that absolutely pulls like a horse. For those unaware, if you are ordering from Analog Motion direct, ultimately it's going to come in a box. But fortunately, the majority of it is already pre-assembled. There are just a couple of things that you have to do. And Analog Motion have made it very, very straightforward for you. Even more straightforward than the AM1. In fact, they have these little tags with QR codes all over it that give you handy tips and sort of links to instructionals on what to do in those particular areas. So I'm really appreciative of the changes they've made to the assembly process. If you're not comfortable doing it, you can just take it straight to somewhere like a bike shop and they can probably do it for you in about 10 minutes. But for someone with very little mechanical knowledge on bikes, although I do have a bit of experience, it took me about 20 minutes. And the best thing is, Analog Motion provides you with all the tools you need in a little bag. So you've got everything there ready to go, and it is a pretty straightforward setup. So the whole process is very easy. So how much does this bike in a box cost? Well, it's quite pricey. It's £1,789 pricey. But actually, that's quite a competitive and fair price in the electric bike market. And when doing comparisons, you'll find out that the AMX actually probably comes out a little bit cheaper than the other options. And this is pretty good considering that Analog Motion are a UK-based company. So if you ever did have anything go wrong, you've got UK-based support. And to me, that's worth every penny of that £1,789. In conclusion, the AMX is a wonderful combination of classic timeless design and modern futuristic horse-pulling features. It's incredible. It really is a beautifully designed product and I have loved every second of it. I recognise that it is quite pricey, but if you were buying one of these to replace taking public transport, for example, which really I think most people want to be doing at the moment, because who wants to be sealed in a metal box with other people coughing in your face? Nobody does. So if you bought one of these to replace public transport, it very, very quickly pays for itself. So therefore, it could technically be free. What I can say about the AMX overall is it's not just the design that I like, and it's not just the fact that it does pull like a horse. All of these things are great, but together as a whole package, this thing just puts a grin on my face. The moment I get on it and the moment I get off it, throughout that entire ride, I've got a great big smile. I'm just enjoying myself. It is just a pleasure to ride, and I'm really, really pleased with the way Analog Motion have gone from their AM1. I just think that seeing a company like Analog Motion continue to grow, continue to develop, and make a product like the AMX, which is, in my eyes, such an improvement, is just fantastic to see. And I mentioned in my original review of the AM1 that Analog Motion had a bright future ahead because I loved the AM1. Well, this has just knocked it out the park, and I'm really, really impressed with what they've been able to do. And I just love the AMX. I think it's such a cool, timeless bike. And that concludes my review on the Analog Motion AMX Classic. I've set myself a goal of hitting 100,000 subscribers by the end of 2021, so if this review has helped you out in any way at all, I'd massively appreciate it if you return the favour and just hit that subscribe button if you can, and that way you'll see more STU'S reviews as well. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for joining, and I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.